How's it going, everyone? Today we got the Nova. As you can see, it's spun around the wrong way, and I'm just gonna come out and say it. This is the last time you're gonna see this engine in this car. So I bought this Chevy Nova 5 years ago now, a little bit more than 5 years, and it's had this engine in it since I got it. It used to have a nitrous 383 with like 600 horsepower, and it was really fast, drag car, but it doesn't have that much power anymore. It has less than half the power that it used to have. And while a V8 is fun, you know, it still makes like 300 foot-pounds, 260 something horsepower. You know, it could use a bit more. There's nothing wrong with more horsepower, right? So I've got two goals here. Gonna get more horsepower, but also make the car a lot more unique and a lot cooler, even cooler than, honestly. It's a pretty fun car. It's a pretty cool car, I think. Other people think so too, they've told me, and that's cool. But I've got some crazy dreams and plans for this thing, and they start today. So, like I said, this is the last time you're going to see this engine in this car. I've got pretty much every tool that I own, plus a couple new things that I bought. You know, engine hoist, I have an engine stand in the back way there, and I'm not going to necessarily use all these tools because Chevy small blocks are easy. You really only need like 3 or 4 wrench sizes, and you're pretty much good to go. But in addition to pulling this engine out, there's going to be some work needed to get the eventual engine in. I'm not going to say what that engine is. That's going to be next time, because hopefully I'll actually be able to show you. And if you know, you know, but, you know. Now, one hint I will give for the new engine is that it's not going to be a V8. It's not an LS. It's not another Chevy small block. It's not a Ford. It's not a Dodge. It is not any of those, you know, typical options for a Chevy Nova or any muscle car, really. Depending on who you ask. But the very first thing before we get started, we're gonna unhook the battery because there are some electrical bits in here. You know, as with any car, anytime you're gonna be doing some major work, if it's even a little bit involved with the electrical system, have to unhook the battery. Not want to, you really have to, unless you just don't care about getting shocked. But part of that additional work to get the other engine installed is I'm gonna need some extra real estate in this area to work with. And so I'm actually gonna take the whole front end of the car off. The hood's gonna come off, and the fenders, core support, radiator, all that's coming out. And then we're gonna have all the room we need. There's already a lot of room without the fenders in here, but I need every inch that I can get, basically. So to start off, I'm going to start by putting the engine hoist together. And let's be honest, putting an engine hoist together is not very exciting, so let's go ahead and skip. Alright, that was certainly the easy part. Now comes basically taking the whole front of the car apart. I'm going to start with the hood and then work my way to the fenders and core support and such. And we'll go from there, and then we'll start draining the fluids. Alright, so I'm actually going to go ahead and kind of disconnect the radiator support here. It's just a few bolts. And then that is kind of the whole radiator support there. It sits in a couple spots down the bottom. So this way, the radiator is now free. And I'm going to take the rest of the core support. I might put like a long zip tie or something just to hold this so it doesn't tip over. While I take everything else off. There's several big bolts for, you know, front part of the subframe. The bumper is another big couple bolts, and then this whole thing I can actually just pick up, get out of the way, and then I can have more access down here. Just because, like, working around things like the battery tray and, you know, like the side and all that, I just want a little bit more room. Got the core support all undone. Battery tray I did have to take off because there's another bolt that goes in between stuff. And right now, basically, I'll be able to pick the whole core support up, and there it is. Now, the harness is still connected, But I'm just gonna set this off to the side while I do my thing up in the front. Now, don't worry about that. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and jack up the front of the car. Can actually, I believe, yes, you should be able to pull the fan out. Now, go ahead and pull the fan out. It's my custom fitted shroud there. And can't forget my little isolators. Don't want to lose those because I will be trying at least to reuse this radiator and fan and such. Now, I'm going to go ahead and jack up the front of the car and start draining everything. And while everything is draining, I'm going to start unhooking the exhaust so I can take the headers out. As you can see, it's already starting to dribble. All I did was actually just break the hose clamp loose. But once I pop the lid, cap rather, we should see more of a flow. Now, I've got it propped up here because I want that hose to be the lowest point, just to not cause too many issues. So let's see here. There we go. Now it's just at the level of the cap, but it shouldn't be too bad with dribbling. Now comes the fun part, and that's getting it to come off of here. Actually, it doesn't feel too bad. Sometimes hoses can be a real pain, and what helps sometimes is take some channel locks, grab it on and twist it, but this one seems like it's going to cooperate for me. Now what I don't want to happen is to have this hose just blow off and coolant go everywhere. The neck goes to about here, so I've got plenty of room before that happens, but I still want to be kind of ginger with it. There's usually at least a couple gallons of coolant in any engine's coolant system, so you know, you want to make sure you got a big enough container and you're ready for the volume. Well, obviously I shouldn't have opened my mouth because exactly what I said I didn't want to happen happened. But it's all right. Had gloves, just got a couple drops on my shoes. So honestly, this really isn't that bad. So I put the cardboard down, soaked up most of it, and I'm just kind of got to contain this. It's mostly water in there. If I'm honest, it's not a whole lot of coolant. But no matter what, if you're draining fluids out of your car, you have a spill, make sure to contain it before you get any drains or anything like that. Got to keep the environment safe and all that. So just be ready for that, and get ready to get wet because, you know, even if you're careful, it just happens. Even if you gently pull the hose, it's still got like the weight of the water itself pushing out. Even if it's not under pressure, it's still a lot of liquid, and you know, fluids are heavy. So that's kind of what happened. As soon as I got it to the edge, it just kind of kept going on its own. I was able to cover the end of the radiator with my hand, had gloves on, and made it a lot better than it might have been, because at least if it's just coming out of the hose, I can point the hose down. There's still going to be a bit more coolant to drain out. I got the lower hose propped up here. It's going to need to drain some more before it's really ready to take the radiator out and all that. Alright, so the top hose doesn't want to come off, so that's where I can show kind of that trick of just give it a nice twist. Probably have to go back and forth a few times, but eventually it should get to the point where you can just get it off by hand. So I think I should be able to get that now. Alright, so got the radiator out. I'm going to set that aside, got it plugged up so no debris gets in there or anything like that. And then I'm going to zip tie these hoses up so I don't have any more drips coming from out of there. And then going to crawl underneath, start draining the oil. and then work my way from there. Oil is pretty much done draining. I've got the exhaust unbolted from the header flanges, and now it's time to unbolt the headers themselves. This is always fun because they're tiny 3/8 head on there, and a lot of them actually I can use a ratchet, but there's some like this where you just can't get a socket back in there, so you just have to use the the old box wrench. One side done and out, and I cover the ports, of course, just to make sure no debris gets in there, but they look good. I'm also probably going to take this time to undo a couple things from the starter. Got a few wires that go to the chassis and all that, and then it will be time to probably start undoing the transmission and maybe start undoing some engine mounts as well. Got the power steering stuff off. I've got the driver's side header off. Took the clutch linkage off as well. So mechanically, once I undo the transmission, I've got a couple wires here that I can just pop out real fast. I don't believe we have much left in terms of like physical stuff keeping me from just pulling the engine out. We have a fuel line. I'm going to attempt to get this out with the transmission on it. I still may or may not have to pull the distributor. I'm kind of debating how I want to go about putting a chain on this and all that. I'm probably going to use one of these bolts on the front of the head, and then try to go from there. Okay, we are jamming here. I've got the well, the shifter is completely out, actually. Shifter itself, as well as the linkage, has been uninstalled. I've got greasy bolts galore, and really close here. I'm gonna attempt to get these bolts off of this engine mount now, and then I believe and then actually I got to figure out the fuel line here. That'll be one other thing. Going to attempt to let any fuel that might come out just drain into my jug here. That would be ideal. And the only concern I have is whether or not the fuel cell and this fuel line, like which one's higher. I'm pretty sure it's a fuel cell, but I don't think it has that much gas in it. I purposefully didn't fill up the car the last couple times I drove it, but I didn't drive it very far. So we'll kind of see how that goes. Worst case scenario, if it starts getting full, I'll just put it back on there real quick. All right, so we got lucky. It just glubbed a little bit, not really much. It like barely splashed in there. So that's another thing checked off. One thing that worried me a little bit is these engine mount bolts are a little bit rounded off, so I wonder what the story is there. But you know, luckily they don't really give me much trouble, and they should be off soon. The transmission, like I said, mount is off, and yeah, we're almost there. Right, and there it is after several hours of really, it wasn't that bad. I was kind of working slow. A couple things like underneath the car just because I didn't have it jacked up like super high. So that definitely would have helped get some of those bolts out easier and such, but it was only a few, and I am excited. I'll be honest, I'm not really sad to see this go, not because there's anything wrong with it, but just because I am that excited for what's next. And that will be for next time. It's dark now. I'm very tired, hungry. Gotta set this thing down on the ground, clean everything up, and then I gotta make some phone calls, but I might be able to see if I can't pick up the new engine this week. Hopefully it comes soon, but I'll see you next time.